Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching this weekly ag weather forecast brought to you by Ag South Farm Credit. We're going to start with some of the rain we saw on Sunday. There were some nasty storms that, of course, rolled through Ag South territory after doing quite a bit of damage in the Mid-South in the day on Saturday. The radar animation you're showing, though, is, honestly, what we saw in terms of precipitation, which was desperately needed across the area. We had several places where this rain came through that was quite dry. Now, the system, as it did roll through, did bring with it quite a bit of nasty weather, but I want to show you the total precipitation out of this up and through 7 o'clock on Sunday night. So again, we're still filling in some of these areas as the night rolls on after I record this, but overall, look at how heavy the rain was right into this area, and parts of southern Georgia just really picking up on it. But is there going to be more added to this? Because our longer standing drought issues are certainly in place. We need to have a discussion as to whether or not we're going to break free of this fall drought, as I've been forecasting now for several weeks. So moisture in place, but we got to take account into how much more we can get. Now, as I said, these storms had a history of being pretty nasty. On the day on the 9th, we had 169 reports of severe weather so far, 25 tornadoes, including some deadly ones that rolled through parts of Tennessee into southern Kentucky. It was a pretty rough go of it in this area, plus some very large hail out of this as well. But as we take a look at some live lightning data here, now this isn't live when you're watching, of course, but one of my favorite sites, blitzertongue.org, you can see the lightning by the time we got into the evening hours, about 9 p.m. on Sunday night. All that lightning was kind of offshore. But I do want to give you a number here. It's kind of amazing. That same website, blitzertongue.org, when we look back over the last 24 hours, we find that across the southeast and the south, including parts of the Caribbean and Gulf of Mexico, you add it all up, there was well over 500,000 lightning strikes. Those are cloud-to-ground strikes, 500,000 of them in 24 hours. So this was an extremely potent system that rolled through, and it did bring in some much-needed moisture. Now, as we plan forward, let's pick this up early in the morning on Monday. We're not going to see a whole lot. We had a little bit of snow in the Appalachian Mountains overnight, some that went through parts of Virginia. But, I mean, gosh, if you just start Monday morning and go forward, there's just nothing really showing up for us other than high pressure to begin this week. So when is our next chance of getting some moisture in the area? We got to get into that discussion. But first, let's put it into context. If we just look back from November 1 through December the 10th, of course, this does not include the rain we got on Sunday, all right? But over that time period, we were drier in the interior. It was wetter at times across the Gulf Coast, southern parts of Georgia. But overall, we're on the drier side of the distribution when looking back over the last 131 years. Our drought monitor reflects that. Now, this, again, a poor forecast on my part. The newest drought monitor through December the 5th looks like this, and over the last 6 weeks, we saw drought expanding in this area. And if you know, I had said I really thought we would work our way into fall with better flow in this area. That better flow is just now coming on, and so we had this delay in bringing in the moisture. Now, throughout the rest of these tabs across the top, I've got both a near and long-term forecast. I've got information on South America. I've got information, a 7-month outlook, and then I've also got information at the very end on Panama. So we've got a lot to cover here. So let's take this as the context of this upcoming forecast and show you what's going to change. Okay, since November the 1st, we've had, compared to average, stronger jet stream level winds that have done that. Okay, they've really jumped out from the Gulf of Mexico along the coast and then really exited east. Now, in order for us to get big-time precipitation, we've got to get these coming across the Pacific and then making the turn sooner. That's what we need. So what needs to change is right in through here and then the North Atlantic. Two different areas. I want to get the winds going much faster here and then more meridional, north-south over here. Okay, that's it. Now, we're going to get the change first in the Pacific, and we think the change is going to come later in the Atlantic. And we're going to stitch that all together, but this is all going to change in a big way. Again, this is anomalous winds since November 1st, excuse me. So what's changed? Over the last 20 days, we saw very cold air leave Europe, big-time snows in the Alps, across Ukraine, coming out of Germany as well, parts of Poland, Belarus, this whole area. Then it got extremely cold across Russia, and now it's colder over here on the eastern side of Russia and parts of Siberia. Now, what's the significance of this? We're watching this cold air translate farther and farther to the east, but it's very warm to the south. Now, we have a relationship in atmospheric sciences called the thermal wind relationship. And essentially, the greater this contrast, the greater the slope in the height field above it, okay, that's looking at different pressure levels, and the stronger the winds shoot out in between. It's being enhanced by the fact that the MJO left here and moved across Indonesia and is popping out in the Pacific. Now, why does that matter? Well, if we got rising motion here, okay, you get exhaust out of it north and south. Those little lines I drew there are pumping momentum into this already strengthening piece of the jet stream. So what's the result of all of this? Now watch. This was from Sunday afternoon's model run. And I want you to watch here. Don't watch the Atlantic. Watch here right now. As I play this forward through this week, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Now watch right here. By the end of this week, getting into early next week, we're getting a sizable Pacific jet extension. Part of the recipe that I want to see change in order to start to see something quite different across much of North America. Now, this is not going to deliver cold air, not even close. But this is the result of all of the cold air that built up here initially, some MJO movement, and the Pacific jet extends as a result. Now, what's the point in telling you this? If we keep this going and we get some subtropical flavor, hey, we start to get a little bit better flow that makes the turn north. And what this could result in is that January, and I mean, honestly, it may take until January, we're going to get systems rolling up the coast. That is huge. I mean, that is a long jet extension there. Now, we need to look at this in a different way. So this is the wind speed. Let's look at the height field. Okay, so these are the troughs and ridges. Now, what you've got first here, this was the first one. That's the one that just swept through. So let's pick this up midday Monday. We go into a time period of above normal heights. We come into a time period of split flow like this. And this piece to the south, this low, is going to take a long time to move into the southern plains, and they need this moisture. But it is going to get over to us. When is it going to get here? Because until then, through Thursday, Friday, Saturday, even into Sunday, it may not get here until next Sunday night, Monday morning. That's what I'm watching. So from, gosh, what was that? I'm curious now. I kind of forgot. There it is. From Wednesday till Monday, this system's going to go from here, there we go, to there. That's going to take a long time, but when it gets to us, we have the chance of getting some late weekend, early next week rainfall to continue to work away in our drought situation. But then it's at the end of this time period that this deep low that's been plaguing us in the Gulf of Alaska, that is where the coldest air has been. That's why it's not been across North America. It starts to extend. Look at that. Gets down here. And what that's going to do is that's going to reinvigorate the pattern after Christmas, such that we begin January, I think, with a whole new look in this pattern. Now, is it aided along by El Nino? Sure, El Nino's at a peak right now. It's probably, honestly, at its peak, and we'll be staying there for another couple of weeks before it starts to back off. But this is very, to be honest with you, it's kind of El Nino-like behavior overall in the pattern. All right, with all that description, let's pick it up with the GFS and the European model. Now, you know that we're not expecting much from Tuesday into Wednesday. Here we go. See the system gathering over here by Thursday? There's Thursday, Friday, Saturday, still not a whole lot going on. But notice that by late in the week, this is Saturday, there's the system I'm keeping an eye on. The GFS tries, look at this. That's what the GFS tries to do. That is not in the European model. And you say, well, why not? Well, the European model has too much high pressure in this area. The GFS backs off. So we already see some model discrepancy by the time we get into Friday and Saturday for parts of southern Georgia and Florida. But the bigger event happens after this. So this is Saturday going into Sunday. Now notice, the GFS is always the more progressive model. What I mean by that is it's always the fastest to bring in the system. European still leaves this thing over the lower Mississippi River Valley. But then the European drags it through. By Tuesday, the GFS has already yanked this up the East Coast as a mighty system, and the European just does it later. It's even at the end of this. So we're looking at next week. Really this weekend, but starting this weekend, but next week, the rainfall kind of getting added into this area. Now, which of the models am I currently trusting? This is a tough question because lately the GFS has been doing a pretty darn good job. It's not that the Europeans have been doing poorly. It's just that some of the skill scores from the GFS have been a bit better. So what I'm telling you is we could see heavier precip this weekend, but the European model says wait. You're going to have to wait on it. Now, given that, I want to show you the drier of the two models. This has already fallen, because remember, I record these on Sunday, so I'm capturing what already fell on Sunday. So notice you go through much of Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. The European model doesn't bring this system through on Saturday. It's got it still back here. But when does that get to us? Right there. This is next Sunday night through Wednesday. The whole point is, including the rain that you saw last night on Sunday night, plus what is coming, that's pretty widespread 2+ inches. In fact, the probability over the next 10 days of grabbing 2 inches, it's decent here. Now remember, this clips off a little bit of the rain we had, but there's still good chances here overall of picking up some of that moisture. In fact, a lot of the cotton belt's got a pretty good drink coming out of this. So just take note of what we've got going on here. Okay, what about week 2? Now remember, week 2 is when we finally start to get the extended jet coming into California. We get a little bit of a break. It's kind of in all 3 models. It's a little bit drier at that time period. But remember, we still have that system that's trying to exit up the East Coast that we're contending with. So that's what you see right over here. But this is going to really change things up once we get beyond that into January and February and March. Now, for some added context, I wanted to show you the temperature pattern we've had, because I think we're going to find ourselves in a bit of a cooler regime going forward. Interestingly enough, we've been very close to the climatological normal when you go back to November 1 all the way to December the 10th. So that's, we're looking here over 40 days. But we've had some cooler time period. We've had frosts that have gotten down into northern Florida, but we've been able to balance that out statistically with above normal temperatures as well. So the statistic doesn't characterize the variability, but you can see it at least in the stats. Now, where's it going in the near term? Monday's a cool one for us. In fact, let me get an update on this real quick. There we go. Monday's a cool down. There it is. That's behind the front. That's just coming through. But we're not going to stick around with a really cold air for a while, because by Tuesday, some moderation happens. Same thing for Wednesday. We're back toward normal. We then get here into Thursday and Friday. We've got a slight cooler bias, but we know going into the weekend, we're going to be watching this system coming out of Texas making its way over here. But if you noticed, there's no connection to Arctic air. We're going to get not just to the 16th, but probably all the way to the end of the month without a true connection to real Arctic air. Let me show you where it is right now. It's on this side of the planet. So here you are, and there's the coldest air. Now, we got a little bit of a cold bias for the next 5 days. Let me rephrase that. Cooler bias. It's not cold. When you want a big Arctic outbreak, you cannot have deep low pressure over Alaska. You've got to have a big ridge over Alaska. We just don't have it. So even as this colder air tries to move over to this side of Asia, it's still got a long ways to go before it starts to affect our pattern. So this gets us out to the 18th. This would be the 13th through the 18th. And I'll keep going. This is all the way to Christmas morning. And what we do not see in the forecast models now, and don't have any reason to go against this, I don't see any connection to some deep, cold air. Okay, where do we take it from here? Next thing I want to show you is what happens once the Pacific jet extends. You see the CFSV2 for Christmas Eve to the end of December starts to pick back up with moisture here, but it's drier in the mid-south, midwest. It hits California. First week of December, drier in the mid-south, wetter in the southeast, wetter into California, Oregon. That is also mimicked by the European model. You see, wetter here, drier in the mid-south, midwest, wetter California. This is also the forecast given to us by the GFS Extended. This goes out to mid-January. Wetter here, drier mid-south, wetter California. See that? So I've got 3 different systems kind of giving us the same look to finish December and get, pretty good chunk of the way through parts of January. So we need to keep all of that in the back of our mind as we think about this pattern going forward. Now, before I give you the longer range, I'm going to come to South America for a moment. This map shows you the last 30 days of precipitation put into the context of the last 44 years. So the data go from 1979 to present. What I've got color-coded and with numbers are the ranks of 2023, the last 30 days in 2023 compared to all those other years. So where you see these single digits, those are areas that are having at least a top 10 driest last 30 days. And where you see the high numbers all the way up to 44, this would be the top 10 wettest. I don't label the middle ones, okay? So I'm just trying to show how dry it is north and how wet it is south and what's also going on in Argentina. And I want to bring you the latest model updates. This was the biggest trend. The European model caved to the same forecast that the GFS did. In fact, the European model even went drier. Now, what's my point? Right now, the European model has almost 90% of the growing area in Brazil with drier than average conditions. It's wet into Uruguay and most of Argentina's big growing area. What does the GFS say? Well, this is its newest forecast. It's got about 70% of Brazil's growing area dry. Wetter down here in, this is called Paraná, Santa Catarina, Rio Grande do Sul. Wet in Uruguay, wet in Argentina. Now, here's the thing. This is very dry, and it's going to get hot again. What's happening right now in Brazil is that there are big questions on the quality of this crop. I mean, the questions come right from here. What did that dryness do, plus 2 episodes of substantial heat, do to the crop? And then the bigger question at the very end is this. This is what the last week of 2023 is supposed to look like, according to the models. The wet returning, near normal rains returning. What's near normal? 3 to 4 inches of rain right in through here. And when you see white, that means no negative anomaly, no positive anomaly. It's normal. That's the European model. And this is the GFS. Pretty similar overall, just a little drier in northern Mato Grosso. So here's my point. If this verifies and better rains return, it is going to save a crop. If it doesn't, this crop is on a knife's edge right now and ready to tumble in the wrong direction. So we have to watch the next 3 weeks extremely carefully, especially the last one of the month of December. I'll watch it. I'll keep reporting back to you each week. From here, I want to take you back to the U.S. We already looked at this one, didn't we? Let's now come back to the bigger picture on El Nino. Here's our El Nino. It does not have support in the North Pacific. We still have a negative PDO. So these two things, cold water here and here, don't often coincide with warm water here. It's helping to limit the strength of this El Nino event. This El Nino is likely at its peak, approaching 2 degrees above average, and is expected to fall through the rest of winter and into spring, possibly becoming neutral by the time we get into the middle of spring. By the start of summer, we could be talking about a La Nina. I mean, we could be if some of the model forecasts are right. Now, what does all that mean? Well, if we just take a look at the bigger climate drivers right now, with El Nino going on, the temperatures in the North Pacific, I don't want to show you precipitation yet. I want to show you pressure. Monthly MSLP anomaly. Now, this is it. Watch. We've got to break this down. This is December. There's all that low pressure in Alaska. I still see it nearby in January, but it's way, way, way less low, higher in this area. And then I get out there into February. Now watch this. When that Alaskan stuff ends, look at how low the pressure begins to come right up the coast. See that? That would be January, and this is February. And there is right now some decent evidence that this upcoming winter is going to be back half loaded, meaning the latter half of January and then February and March, to really start to crank, let's go monthly, on developing lower than normal heights. There it is right there. That's January. And the possibility of a very active storm track. Now, where's it going to come from? I think it'll do this. I think it'll do that. I think it will do this. Those all three. Miller A, Miller B, and a panhandle hooker. That's what we call these. And they're just going to come screaming up the East Coast. That is right now what we currently think. That's the potential for this winter. Now, let's come back to the precipitation side of it. That's why this seasonal forecast anomaly for, here we go, January, February, March is wet up the East Coast. And then if we go farther, this is February, March, April, wet. We go into March, April, May, wet. We go beyond that, April, May, June, wet. So here's my long story made short. There's overwhelming evidence that this is going to be the case, but I also have to tell you that I really missed the forecast in November. I thought we would have been wetter in November. Now, we've had a system come through in December, but we need a lot more to just eliminate all of our drought risk. So this is the European model. Is there support in the NMME just released? January, February, March, wetter. February, March, April, wetter. March, April, May, wetter. April, May, June, wetter. May, June, July, wetter. Now, this does not mean start building an arc. It just means that the likelihood of us having above average precipitation for probably the next 4 to 6 months, there's a greater chance of that occurring than going drier. So, does El Nino help? Yeah. Is this maybe the best long-range thinking that we've got right now? Sure. I don't know. I don't have anything else to combat against it. But what I can say is this is likely going to be a back half-weighted winter. That's kind of been the phrase I've attached to this winter. It's going to get going, but not anytime soon. What's going to help it maybe? For the next 10 days, polar vortex is living on the wrong side of the world if you want cold. It's been in Russia. It's been over Europe. It's been in the North Atlantic. We've got to get this to wobble its way around and really change position and link up with the tropospheric polar vortex to really start to deliver some cold air. Now, most of you who are watching this don't really want a cold winter. It's unpleasant. But honestly, nasty winters lead to the best growing seasons. So we may have to be hoping for one of those later on this year. I think it's the best chance I've seen in a while for East Coast snows. So let's watch it carefully. I told you I'd finish with Panama, so here it is. Just want to bring this up again. Panama Canal continues to be forecast drier than average. All the wetter weather's in the northern Caribbean, the Gulf of Mexico, and this side of the western Atlantic. But we're not expecting much over the next 10 days here, which continues to push that problem farther down the road, and we'll likely be talking about it all the way till the middle of next year. So I'm going to stop there and just tell you all to have a great week, and I'll pick up with you again next Monday. Have a good one. Thanks.